This podcast deals with sensitive content around sexual abuse. For New Zealand listeners looking for support, please call the Help Foundation on 0800 623 1700 24/7 for a confidential line. Gloria, the best places for people to connect with you online?
It's handingtheshameback.org.
2, 3, 4. A Beacon of Hope is a weekly podcast that shines a light on the human spirit and explores the power of hope in our lives. Join me, Will Fleming, as I talk to people from all walks of life about where they find hope and how they use it to navigate life's challenges.
Be good, be safe, and be happy.
Today I had the privilege of speaking with Gloria Masters, a survivor of sex trafficking. Gloria was born into a household that embraced this horrible practice. Gloria's father used her for financial gain, subjecting her to unimaginable suffering for 16 long years. Despite enduring horrendous sexual, physical and psychological abuse, Gloria held on to hope. And in this podcast she shares how she used hope to find the courage to rebuild her life. Well, Gloria, thank you for joining me on this podcast, this digital connection, this beacon of hope that we will hopefully take from the metaphorical into the digital landscape, if you will. I start with 3 questions for my guests, and I wonder if you'll just allow me to ask you 3 questions before we kick off. What is something that you are most proud of in your life?
I think being able to parent my 2 beautiful children and see the gift in them, because that wasn't afforded me. So I'm proud of being able to break that cycle and see the gift that parenting those children.
What is something you believe in strongly and why?
I believe that in all of us there's an instinctual knowing and a truth. And I think what we do often is we look outside ourselves for answers. And I'm here to say, start to go within. That's where the answer lies.
This may be our podcast, but I'll ask you this too. What is one of the biggest challenges you've faced and how has it changed you as a person?
I think stepping up into the light and lifting my head and releasing the shame I carried for well over 50 years.
Is it okay to go through a version of your story today for our audience?
100%. There are many out there like me, Will, who haven't been allowed or encouraged or had the confidence to speak, and my story is not a good one, and yet it's so powerful and beautiful, and the hope that comes through is the only reason I tell it. I was born into a family where child sex trafficking was the norm, and I was abused sexually, physically and emotionally for 16 years by my father, his extended family, and leased to gangs, into Freemasons. And my father made so much money out of me that he was one of the first people in our country to import a Pontiac, a vehicle which was quite classy back in the day. There were many gatekeepers and enablers around this, and if we just looked at child sexual abuse for what it is and what it was simply to provide sexual gratification to men and women that were prepared to pay for it. I was featured in many pornographic or child exploitation movies as well. My grandmother trained me in how to be as seductive as possible so men and women would pay more. So I'm very grateful to be here, and there were times during that part of my life where I didn't want to be. So I've come through, and I've come through with a story and with the light to help other beautiful survivors to show there is hope and there is a way to emerge.
Gloria, how did you keep hope? Did you even understand that? What, I guess the dark and the light is a way for people to maybe have a glimpse into that, but for most people, I think the jaw-dropping aspect is how do we sit here with you today? And isn't that a testament to the strength of people?
The power of our minds is phenomenal. And, I was so grateful because from quite a young age, as children do, I had little imaginary friends. And in my case, they were little angels around me, and I would play with them, and I would see their light and their love. And I felt hopeful. And I think I am still, and I always was, an eternal optimist. And I think partly anything, a smile or someone giving me something, it always lit me up from the inside. And I realise now as an adult, it was that kind of kept me going. And I think for all of us, even in our hardest and darkest moments, there's always something to be grateful for, and that's what I found. I always found something.
Have you ever kind of explored, does this stuff still go on in New Zealand? Is it it's been kept in the shadows? How big is this? I don't even know what to call it,
It's child sex abuse, yeah. So latest stats from Help New Zealand, our leading foundation in Aotearoa, 1 in 3 girls by the age of 16 years will have been sexually abused. That's not might be or could be. They will be sexually abused by the time they are 16. 1 in 4 to 1 in 6 boys by the age of 16 will have been sexually abused. Our country leads the world in these statistics. I don't know if you join me in this thought, Will, but where's the noise around it?
Absolutely.
The silence is deafening. There are many, many adult survivors in our country who are not being supported or heard. And I guess it doesn't suit the narrative for this to be exposed, because what it means is we as survivors may speak, but good people struggle with it because it's uncomfortable. And so nothing tends to happen with those responses. We as survivors can struggle to find our voices because we hold the shame. And even though it never belonged to us, it stayed with us. And the only ones that benefit really are the abusers out there. But we have to wonder if we are leading the world in this, as we do in child infanticide, as we do in suicide, as we do in domestic violence. What's going on, Will?
I don't even know what's going on with me right now. I just broke out to a massive sweat. I don't understand why.
Because you're in shock.
Yeah. And it's actually, I'm sitting here trying to be composed and have this conversation with you, but it seems too wild that this isn't the front page every day.
Well, I've learned to ask myself why that is. And I think it's because there's a myth out there that this only happens in lower socioeconomic groups and that it's not a mainstream event. The biggest abuse does not occur in counties Manukau. This is among our elite, among our leaders, among our key players everywhere. So I think we have to start recognizing that this is not necessarily a gender issue or a racial issue or a financial issue. This is actually spread across all sectors. But if we're looking at holding hope, I guess the hope is the more people that start to speak up, the more this may be recognised, and the more that this can get some momentum behind it, because we're all connected. We're all one, really. And, if we can stand beside our beautiful survivors and say, I stand with you, I see you, I believe you, those are powerful words.
What was the pathway to healing?
When I no longer had to see my father again, I was 16, and I never willingly did. And so I thought that's one of the best days of my life was when I turned 16. Interestingly, though, that's when the impact really hit me. And I think it wasn't until I was a mother myself in my 30s that I started being able to deal with this trauma. And the healing began because I had beautiful children I was needing to care for and raise. So it was one of the hardest things in the world, of course. But once I began the journey of uncovering and facing into and trying to manage the impact, other things started to make more sense, and my behaviour started to reflect, this is why this happened. But I guess as well, I've now gone on to setting up a charity here in New Zealand and running a YouTube channel called Handing the Shame Back, because that is what we as survivors do when we speak. And, we've got thousands of people across the world who join and watch and get a bit of support and advocacy. So healing is different for all of us, not one size fits all. I've written several books actually, Will, and one is A Flight Path to Healing. So when you said, what was your path, I thought, flight path to healing. But that's kind of a guide for survivors to find their way through as well. Mm.
What did you dream about? Maybe metaphorically and actually physically. Do you remember having dreams growing up?
I used to dream I was flying. I could fly.
Really?
Yes, I could fly. And I would wake up before I hit the ground, which apparently is a good thing because you don't want to hit the ground. But, so I dreamt about flying. I was always in motion. And I think nothing ever stays the same, does it, Will? Things are always moving, so it was a metaphor, really. But what do I think today? I'm so grateful for life. I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so grateful to shine a light for those that can't yet.
What about for your kids? How was the journey having their hero being a hero? That can't be easy at all.
Not at all. And I don't usually talk about them because they're big stonking adults now. But obviously they're very proud of their mum. They're heartbroken, of course, because of what I experienced. But beautiful people and have lots of compassion and love for others as well. So, they're doing great. Thank you for asking.
Well, and Gloria, I guess one of the things that I think is, I had one of those mums who kept me away from, she protected me. It's why it's really difficult for me to sit with you, because I only know that love, and it's not fair that I have to talk with you today like that. It should be that you had that too.
I know, and I never, to be honest, I never had a childhood, so I can't sugarcoat it. What I can say is I'm more the child now than I was as a child. So, but I think too, there's a reason I went through it all, and I'm being genuine when I say it. Just it humbles me so much when one survivor says, "Thank you, I feel a bit more hopeful," or "It's so great you're talking because it makes me feel less alone." And I think that's my gift to the world, if you like, Will, is I just want to gather all the survivors up one at a time and just say, "Hey, you're loved, you're seen."
Yeah.
Yeah.
When trauma happens in our lives, I mean, you were one of the first people to reach out when I released one of my podcasts around some trauma I hadn't really registered as trauma and had been carrying it. But you said, well done on getting it out. What's the kind of, for people who maybe are holding on to a variety of traumas, is it actually quite good for us to get it out? I mean, it probably sounds obvious, but this sounds like part of your journey when you get that courage to share that story every time someone asks. It's handing it back, like you say.
Yeah, handing the shame back. And look, it is. And it took me until 3.5 years ago before I could lift my head, look anyone in the eye and talk about it. So it's fairly new for me. And I think if I said to you, for a survivor to speak is like someone abseiling down off a sheer cliff face without guide ropes, I'm not over-exaggerating. The power of the fear behind this is phenomenal. And I think it takes such courage to do it because it all began in shame, secrecy and silence. And then shame took the gold and kept us quiet for the rest of our lives. So there's people you will know, others will know that you don't even know that have been sexually abused because they will never talk of it. So I guess I'm here to say, yes, if you can get it out, and let's keep it simple. Even sharing with one person who is your friend that you trust or a family member that you trust, just one person helps to release it. If that's too hard, just writing it out and then throwing that away. It's just there's 150 different ways of releasing. Some people paint, some people draw, some people write poetry, some people do what I do and get interviewed all over the place to share this. Some people just quietly tell one person. But the reality is the shame never belonged to any of them. So holding it within is actually a little bit like carrying on the abuse. Let it go. The shame never belonged to you, beautiful survivors, ever.
Is it a Kiwi thing to hold on to things? Or is everyone like this? Is it just part of human nature to, I don't know, is it like takes up amount of bravery to know that there'll be someone there to hear you maybe, and we think that people won't?
Well, because we were conditioned to never speak, we were either threatened that, our family members would be killed or the dog would be tortured or that's in the worst cases, or they were manipulated. And there's this thing called grooming, Will, which is important for the listeners. And so the manipulation may have been, oh, you're my favourite. You're the special one. I always look after you. Just do this for me this one time. And so there's a whole myriad of ways that children are and we are made to keep the silence because we manipulate. Think of yourself as a little boy. The adults were in charge. There's no way you're going to go against an adult. Yeah. So, the silence is ensured. And then when we finally break free, we are holding such shame. It renders us incapacitated. But the grooming, there's a myth out there that the grooming happens with the children. Can I explode that myth with you? It's the adults around the children that are groomed, yeah? We need to wake up to that. Hey, buddy, let's go to the game. Hey, now you go out with your missus, I'll look after the kids. Or, hey, come round to mine, I'll coach the kids next weekend. And another myth is that women don't abuse. We know that in the States, a recent research showed us between 25 and 30% of pedophiles are women. And will we have to start accepting this is true? I know it's horrible, but the truth needs to emerge.
Do you have communications with the police and stuff? That's probably a long...
Yep.
And is there actively things being done?
Look, the police do a magnificent job. Unfortunately, their funding is such that for adult survivors like me, there's just no time or resource really. For our beautiful tamariki and, our adolescents, look, there's lots of groups doing their best out there, and the police are aware of what's happening. It's, it's rampant, and again, it's across all sectors, so the abusers are not what you think.
Right. But do you mean like they're hiding in plain sight type thing?
100%.
One of the things when I was thinking about, you were talking about this kind of like, being kind of given to these groups or whatnot. And what is it that exactly? Is it the power? Are these people looking for power? Dominance over somebody? Is it like a test to that you will do this ultimate harm, and that shows that you're bound to secrecy? I'm not talking about the victim. I'm talking about the perpetrators. What are they looking for? Were you able to contemplate that?
Yeah. Look, I think you're right. I think there's a few things. I think what you said is 100% accurate. If you engage in any of that, or you're coerced into any of that, you're then culpable, and you know it and they know it. Yeah? Makes sense? The second aspect is some of my abuse was with a couple of gangs here in New Zealand. There were only 3 back then. But that was pretty horrendous, and this was initiation ceremony stuff. So that was pretty, that again, that mentality was to prove something so that someone could belong. Yeah. And, I think there's that aspect. Then I think there's a certain amount of the population we hear that it's could be as high as 10% who are just psychopaths. And I think there's a lot of sexualizing of children in our culture and globally, actually, that we don't even think about. Just turn off the sound to any latest musical video, turn the sound off and watch what's going on in the video. And our children are watching all of that. Mm. Just as an example.
Absolutely. If you think about breaking a cycle, and that you broke a cycle in your story for your kids,
yes.
Do you think that cycle got passed on through previous generations of your family?
Well, because my father's mother was the one that was paid commission to groom me and teach me, I suspect yes. Here's another myth to expose as well. We've got beautiful male survivors in our country that I've interviewed and across the world. I really feel for our men, because they don't go on to abuse, and yet there's this myth out there that they all do. I'm here to say, no, they don't. And it's time, I'm doing a lot of work with male survivors Aotearoa. I often have them on a panel or on a show because men and women, we need to stand together with this and support each other.
Question I couldn't find anyone that's talked to you online is, when you're not talking about this, what do you get up to? What's some hobbies? What's things you like to do? What's your spark?
Yes. Oh, look, I love writing. I'm such a writer. So I love doing all that. And I love hiking. We've got some great New Zealand walks. So just did the Queen Charlotte over the summer, which we didn't really have. And yeah, I like physical things. So I like getting out there and swimming and yoga and all that sort of thing, having a bit of fun with friends, and good. Life's great.
Absolutely. It's partly why I started this podcast, because you can convince yourself, and many do, that it's not. And even in our policies and those type of things, it can be all about there's not enough. But as somebody who received love, and that protection, it's about trying to amplify that, which is what I hope that part of what we talked about today does that. Because that's, I guess, the last question. Even after all of that stuff, are you still hopeful? Are you hopeful that life, that the bright will always illuminate the dark?
Look, when I think about light and dark, I think about dark as being the underbelly of life, and in terms of not seeing the hidden, abusive, narcissistic, hurtful to others, damaging, all of that to me is dark. And the light is the opposite. So that other focus, that genuine interest and compassion for others. And to me, light will always win. And that's, I think, the power of this. And I know it was a little bit of a challenge, Will, to think, gosh, how can we do this and give light and will give hope to others? And I think it's really powerful what you're doing, because the last thing to go for anybody, no matter what level of trauma, is hope. So if we can just provide a tiny bit of hope, let's do that.
If you were talking directly to my audience and they were picking up on that frequency you're talking today, and they might need that bravery or support to say, hey, it's time I hand it back, what would you say?
I think trust yourself. I think know that who you are is always wanting to emerge in you. If you ignore it, it will shoulder tap. If you ignore that, it's going to nudge you. If you ignore that, you're gonna get shoved. We are all called to healing and wholeness all of the time. And if it's your time, you will know it, because it won't leave you. So I think, Will, you alluded to it earlier. It's actually much more helpful and healthy for us to express if we can. And people are always welcome to go to the foundation, Handing the Shame Back. So it's handingtheshameback.org, and have a look at what we offer there. Very welcome to look at the channel, which provides interviews with survivors, supporters, resources, etc. There's always a way through, and I think it's just trusting your instinct around what message you're receiving. This is such a cost to our country and to other countries, and I'll tell you why. Over 70% of PTSD sufferers are not Vietnam vets. They are adult survivors of child sexual abuse. Over 55% of suicides are caused or can be linked through this type of childhood trauma. Over 50% of our inmates in all prisons in our country are linked to this childhood trauma. Are you starting to see the cost? Our rehabs, over 85% of our rehabs in New Zealand have childhood trauma at its base. to me, it's a silent endemic. Come on, open your eyes, open your ears. When are we going to start talking about this? We've had a couple of brave women called the Riosa team that walked the length and breadth of New Zealand, raising awareness. They approached all our key media outlets. Guess what? No interest. We had a beautiful male survivor recently do the same. No interest. What's going on, Will?
Yeah, what is going on, Gloria? What's your reading on that?
It doesn't suit the narrative. The decision makers don't want it. I was meant to be on the AM show last year. It got cancelled 3 times. In the end, the producer rang and these were her words. Oh, the bosses don't think people want to hear about it. They only want good news. My response, doesn't mean a child doesn't have to get up and go to school the next day.
Kind of speechless, really.
Yeah, so look, to help our beautiful men and women out there who are struggling, just love to them and nothing but support. And they're not alone. There's a lot of us out there. And I think we just need to be the voice and carry this forward.
Well, Gloria, I want to thank you for reaching out to me originally and for us to connect and transfer the idea that we can do this, and we did it. To end, you mentioned it before, but the best places for people to connect with you online?
Yeah, so it's handingtheshameback.org, and we're also the same name through all social media platforms. They wish to have a look at the channel. There's a lot of resources and help there as well.
Beautiful, Gloria. Take care. We hopefully can keep in touch and
yes,
keep shining a light on the story.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Will.
2, 3, 4. Thank you for tuning in to this frequency of hope in our podcast today. If you found value from this episode and want to hear more, I would love it if you could follow, subscribe, and rate our show. By doing so, you will increase the frequency of the beacon of hope. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other platform, please take a moment to hit the follow or subscribe button and leave a rating and review. I truly appreciate your support and feedback, and it helps us make our podcast even better. Thank you.
Be good. Be safe. And be happy. Yeah. Sounds like that song, doesn't it? Be happy.
All right, Mama,
Yeah.
we'll stop there, right?
Yeah, okay. All right.